I want you to imagine something. You discover a new restaurant, a really, genuinely great restaurant. You go back 4 times in 2 months. You recommend it to friends, you leave a 5-star review, you think about it at work, you dream, mildly, about the duck confit. Then, one day, someone at the table next to you leans over and says, "You know the sous chef consulted with someone you don't like politically back in 2014, right? Do you uneat the duck confit?" Because that, broadly, is what happened to Slay the Spire 2 in May of 2026. A game that hundreds of thousands of people played, loved, praised, spent real money on, has now been review bombed. Not once, not twice, but 3 times in under 60 days. The most recent and spectacular wave triggered by the discovery that a feminist media critic named Anita Sarkeesian is listed in the credits as a consultant. A name that has been there publicly since launch. A name that most players scrolled past without registering while they were busy having a great time. This is a story about a monster that was sleeping quietly under your favorite indie game the entire time. And what happens when somebody decides to wake it up. Let's establish the facts, because the facts here are genuinely important. And also, in a dark comedy kind of way, extremely funny. Slay the Spire 2 is a roguelike deck builder developed by Megacrit, a small indie studio. It launched into Steam Early Access in March 2026. Right out of the gate, the title made a strong impression, surpassing titles like Rust, Arc Raiders, Resident Evil Requiem, and Apex Legends. At its peak, Slay the Spire 2 hit 574,638 concurrent players on Steam. That is not a small number. That is a number that AAA studios with hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing budgets would be proud of. For a 2-person indie studio, that is a miracle. People loved this game. Not in a, yeah, it's pretty good way, in a, this is my new obsession and I haven't talked to my family in 3 weeks way. Then came April. In April 2026, the game found itself at the center of controversy over balancing changes, with accusations on social media that the developers were trying to dictate how players should enjoy the game. The backlash led to review bombing #1. Now, a game studio making balance decisions that a portion of its players disagrees with is not unusual. It happens constantly. Most studios respond with a patch, some communication, and the community eventually moves on. What's notable here is that this was review bombing event 1. There will be a 3. We'll come back to that. Then came May 5th. Someone noticed, months after launch, that media critic and feminist frequency founder Anita Sarkeesian is listed in Slay the Spire 2's credits as a consultant. I want you to sit with how remarkable that is. Months after launch. The credit was there. It had always been there. Her consultant credit was publicly visible before launch and only became a major talking point after someone highlighted it and the discourse escalated. But the game hadn't changed. The cards hadn't changed. The mechanics hadn't changed. The duck confit was exactly the same duck confit it had always been. 2 days after the first post pointing this out, the Steam review rating was down to 61% positive. By the time the dust settled, 66% of recent reviews were negative, and the game's overall Steam rating had dropped from overwhelmingly positive to mostly negative. Valve itself flagged the activity as off-topic. Valve, the company that built the review system, looking at what was happening to one of its most beloved recent releases and flagging it as off-topic. That's the setup. Now let's talk about the monster. Who is Anita Sarkeesian? And why does her name function in certain corners of the internet like an activation phrase from a spy thriller? Sarkeesian is a media critic who ran a nonprofit called Feminist Frequency. In 2012, she launched a Kickstarter called Tropes vs. Women in Video Games, raising $158,922 from an original $6,000 goal. The series was released in 2014 and became one of the 3 inciting triggers for Gamergate. Gamergate. For those of you who were blessedly too young or too sane, it was a loosely organized harassment campaign in 2014 that rapidly revealed itself to be a coordinated effort to drive women and progressive voices out of gaming spaces. It also, critically, never really ended. It just went underground, became ambient, a set of grievances and vocabulary and enemies lists that persisted beneath the surface of gaming culture. Waiting. waiting specifically for someone to type a name into a search bar. According to coverage from The Gamer, Sarkeesian's website indicates she helps developers in areas like writing women and appealing to a broader audience. There is a reasonable debate to be had about whether that kind of consultancy, if applied heavy-handedly, can sanitize creative work. That is a legitimate conversation. Some critics, including feminist critics, have had it productively. It's a genuinely interesting question about creative process and artistic integrity. That is not, however, the conversation that happened on Steam in May of 2026. The conversation that happened on Steam was several thousand people deciding that a game they had either played and enjoyed or, and this is the part that deserves its own trophy, was now a political enemy deserving of destruction. Thousands of people purchased Slay the Spire 2 just to review bomb it because Sarkeesian was listed in the credits. They gave Megacrit money to hurt Megacrit. They became customers of the thing they despised in order to register their despising of it. In doing so, they increased the game's revenue and gave a two-person indie studio money that will fund whatever they make next. There's a word for this. The word is galaxy-brained. It means a chain of reasoning so internally consistent and so completely disconnected from real-world outcomes that it produces the exact opposite of its intended effect, while feeling to the person doing it like genius. Now here is the thing that I keep coming back to. The thing that sits at the dark, funny, sad heart of this entire situation. Valve flagged the reviews as off-topic. Developer Megacrit is yet to comment on the situation. And you know what? I understand that choice. The silence of Megacrit is not cowardice. It is the rational response of a small indie studio. And here is the cosmic cruelty that makes this a dark comedy rather than just a tragedy. After the backlash from the review bombing spread in early May, an ex-user made a post pointing out that everybody enjoyed playing the game until one person pointed out her name in the credits, garnering over 9,500 likes in 3 days. The experience of the game had not changed. The cards were the same, the mechanics were the same. The roguelike loop was intact. The only thing that changed was the addition of a name most had never even noticed. And that name, not the game, is now what defines Slay the Spire 2's Steam rating. The monster under the bed doesn't need to be real to ruin your sleep. Let's be clear about what review bombing actually accomplishes. Valve has flagged the reviews. The game continues to be played by hundreds of thousands. Megacrit continues to update it. What the review bombing has accomplished is this. It has made the Steam review page a less useful document. In attempting to punish Megacrit, the review bombers have punished the exact tool that independent games rely on most. This is the part where we zoom out, because what happened to Slay the Spire 2 is not unique. Review bombing has been a feature of Steam's ecosystem for years. Steam's review system was designed to be democratic. The problem is that democracy can be gamed. It can be gamed by studios who create accounts to inflate scores, and it can be gamed by organized communities who want to use a commercial metric as a political lever. Gamergate was 12 years ago. The people who were most enraged by her work are now in their late 20s or 30s. And yet, every Tier 3 subscriber heard the activation phrase Anita Sarkeesian and shot up in their gaming chairs. The monster doesn't age. The monster just waits. And it is very, very patient. What is genuinely alarming is the possibility that studios will begin making creative decisions based on who might appear in their credits rather than what's best for the game. So where does this leave us? Slay the Spire 2 is a great game. Go play it and form your own opinion. I suspect you will find, as hundreds of thousands of people found before anyone noticed the credits, that it plays like a dream. Megacrit will be fine. Love is more durable than any review bombing campaign. The monster being awake doesn't unring the bell of the game being good. Now, the question I want to put to you, and I genuinely want to read your answers in the comments, is this. Is Steam's review system still the gold standard it was designed to be, or has it become something that needs to be rethought from the ground up? If you enjoyed this video, or if you just wanted to make sure I wasn't a consultant for anyone politically inconvenient, subscribing costs nothing, and it genuinely does help. I'll see you next time!